Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. The one and only V, the Grill Economist, come to you live on this edition of Rogue ESW. We're starting early today because we're trying to catch a guy that I love listening to his viewpoints. And folks, if you haven't heard about him, I'm talking about Xoaquin Flores. He is the man, runs an incredible Telegram channel over at the New Resistance. The links would be in the description box. And he's a former journalist, former activist. This guy is on point. His geopolitical analysis is hard hitting, clear cut. And I love listening. Cowboy as well. Very, very high level intel. I definitely appreciate having Xoaquin on. So without further ado, Xoaquin, welcome back, brother. It's great to see you. Great
Thanks for
having
having
you back.
me. It's good to see you, and good to see you, Nick.
Yeah, good to see you, man. I'm
Volume
a
up on-
frequenter on the show. I like if I see the live shows going on, I'm almost always going to be there. So it's a hell of a show you got on Telegram, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yes, we put the work into it. Well, I just put my antenna up and then I just let the words flow. But people could think it's work, but yes.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, we've had some interesting stuff in the last few days, and now feel free to actually kind of take the show where you want it to go. I know everybody is, of course, talking about Charlie Kirk, and there's some interesting things that you've said about Charlie Kirk as to, factions and why this might have happened. And then another interesting kind of along those same lines that you've been talking about lately is Venezuela. And I know attention's kind of off Venezuela right now, but I think we probably should not be terribly distracted from Venezuela. And your views on that and who's who with that one. Those are two things I'm interested in hearing about. But, if you have anything you think is more pertinent, please take it where you want it to go.
The recent assassination, I think, is on everyone's mind. I mean, with Charlie Kirk, it's a little. I think that's going to take precedent. If we have time to talk Venezuela, then we'll do that. But I think, I think the Charlie Kirk situation is one of those that is so poorly understood, or there's like a lot of, the internet is such a strange place because what you want is to have as much cross-semination and interaction between different thinking people on the left, on the right, beyond that, people without those definitions. And everyone needs to be in a broad conversation. Like, what was this guy really about? And if you had just thought that he was, your typical 2012 neocon, Republican youth, Turning Point USA, talking points, Israel firster type of thing. That is definitely a legitimate first take, but without understanding what was really going on, the things he was actually saying, the things he was dog whistling, and the things he was even saying out loud towards the end, really figure into raising big questions, about who he really was, what he was really saying, who he was really working for, and who he was not working for. Yeah. And I think it really points to a lot of interesting things that relate to, I don't know, am I allowed to use words? Like, can I say, okay, so Netanyahu, right, and Trump, in my opinion, are not the best of friends.
Yeah,
and,
it seems that way.
I view that very differently from an analysis of, let's say, Israel and the U.S. position on Israel. So, with that, with those distinctions, sorry, I did that. Hold on, my volume. I can't hear you guys. My bad. With those distinctions in mind, I think it's very hard. Someone like myself that's been such a lifelong pro-Palestine activist, at the marches, part of the left, we have a very large, Lebanese and Arab community in Los Angeles, and it's really part of the vibration. The Jewish people, also where we're from, are not, hardline Zionists. They might be, change Israel, reform it, but definitely sympathetic to the Palestinians. The context was always they wanted to see a Palestinian state. It was maybe a different time and place. It's gone now, but that's where I come from, Nick and V. So I understand people's reactions to a character like he who was, we can say his name, I guess, too. But this is a very, I don't want you guys to be like the Eye of Sauron, up on you. But the assassination anyway, Charlie Kirk assassination is something that I think needs some exploring.
Yeah, it seems like YouTube is not so much of a problem at this point for saying like people's names. So I think you're probably okay on that. If V, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, it sounds good.
He's like, "Oh, fine, it's fine." Okay, so Kirk, so again, we can't make any definitive conclusions, but we can look at where things are pointing. And it's when you look at the recent things he was saying, and even going back to immediately after October 7th, people close to him were also indicating this tension. There's a lot of stuff that's being confirmed across the X platform. The fact that it can be confirmed across X, and the fact that this conspiracy theory, so to speak, is actually non-censored on X should tell you a lot about Musk and Trump and where these positions are lining up. We should not expect like the FBI or anyone to rock the boat or to require a deep analysis of divisions within Israel and who the Trump administration is playing in Israel against who. Like, we should expect a very low resolution. We support Israel. No fingers pointed at nefarious actors from the Holy Land, so to speak. So in other words, what to expect and what not to expect. We should look to expect the pattern that we've seen over the past decade, where basically people like you and I, and what they call weaponized autism, the internet will figure this out, and the internet is what's going to, proliferate the truth, and that, in this Gramscian sense of, cultural hegemony, is what's going to dominate what people understand as common sense. So for anyone to have credibility in that context of common sense is, in other words, we are the media, right? And we are the FBI. And we're actually figuring this out, like we collectively, people, through all these different platforms and different groups online, and individuals that are just looking frame by frame at what happened. They're mapping out like what the relationships were. They're studying what Charlie Kirk was saying over the past year or two in particular, and knowing, the fears he was expressing as he was kind of getting closer to this more nuanced version of what maybe someone like Candace Owens is saying out loud. He had been articulating that nuanced version. I don't know, V or Nick, if you've seen the clips yet of what, in fact, Charlie Kirk was saying or had said.
I think I heard when you were talking about yesterday, you played a clip from him, and it had to do with 10-7.
Yeah, yes.
So
right.
I don't have that clip.
There were also other clips as well where he was talking about quote unquote secular Jewish money funding some of them, like the open borders and all the things that are like the woke stuff, the DEI stuff, the LGBT stuff. He was also saying those things as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's on a track of kind of that could be considered more like a more historical, nationalist critique of liberal Judaism that you would have echoed in the mid-century modern period in Europe. Yeah. I would say that there's accuracy in there, but that's more like following the critique of cultural Marxism in the sense of like then atheist or progressive people of Jewish descent, and their influence on those questions. And there's an agenda there, but is it a religious one? This is stuff he was saying on the other side, though. He's criticizing what he calls the hard right in Israel, and he's saying that right. So this is like a different track. This is like the other side of that coin, so to speak.
Right.
And here he's being very articulate that he's questioning whether 10-7 was an inside job.
Right.
And at first he tries to massage it in like maybe these were malactors trying to subvert Netanyahu, but then he kind of cuts to the chase, and on a cui bono analysis, he's like, this benefits Netanyahu because there were people in the streets, calling for him to step down. Hundreds of thousands of people have been protesting, and there's this legal and constitutional crisis. And then they say that 10-7 was so convenient for him because he's then able to basically punch through all this lawfare and then remodel the Constitution to his liking, and execute this emergency law provision and remain in power. And it's very convenient for him. And he's asking, why did the IDF stand down for 6 hours or 12 hours or whatever, right? And then he's talking about that he thinks that this mandate, that Netanyahu is going to use this. And then he says, I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And he kind of laughs nervously. And then he says, they're planning to ethnically cleanse all the Gazans from the Gaza Strip. All the Palestinians are going to be ethnically cleansed from Gaza. And he says, and that's just what it is. He just has to say it. And so these are things that he wasn't saying that with approval, by the way. You could see the disgust and you could see his attitude towards that,
Yeah.
That's just one example of a few, though. I mean, last month he was on like a Turning Point USA thing in August with what's her face, formerly from Fox News. Nick, you might remember her name, but like a blonde chick. Anyway,
Not offhand.
But know her. Who's that?
Oh no, not offhand.
Yeah, but anyway, Megyn Kelly, and they're talking about that, the Epstein Mossad connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's trying to massage it in like either it was the CIA, or it was the Saudis, or it was Mossad. And then Megyn Kelly's like, seems like it would be Mossad. And then he's like, well, let's poll the audience. How many think it's Mossad? And then it's like more than half the people. And he goes, looks like half of you think it's Mossad. We're not saying it's Mossad. It's like the member from the History Channel, like, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. So,
yeah.
It was
actually, I made a meme like that with that guy, and it's like, I'm not saying it's Zionists, but Zionist.
Yeah. So it's again, and then when a lot of theories were like starting to pop up, and this is simultaneous, it was profound, and people are like, Israel's behind it. Like, there must have been millions of people across X, across Telegram, across Instagram that were saying, Netanyahu's behind this. Like, so much so that Netanyahu had to like be questioned on TV, like on Newsmax, and like to respond to that accusation, right? I mean, in other words, you ignore, right? Like, what are the stages of it, right? You guys know the drill. Like, pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
Right.
Deny.
Deny, and then
misdirect.
Right. So
And then,
they already
like,
got
make
to
fun of it,
deny and
lambast it.
correct. Like, they're past ignoring. They can't ignore it. And this was already within 24 fucking hours or less, like 12. That Netanyahu's already being questioned on TV, like, did you do this? And the woman asking him, Greta, what's her face? She's like a train wreck, but whatever. Like, she's like, has this face of incredulity, like the one that they save for Lavrov, or the one that they save for Putin when they do an interview, like on Western.
Oh
So,
my God. Yeah,
so
Greta
much
Van
going on
Susteren.
there. So much going on there.
She gave him the Tucker Carlson face.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
So,
another guy that's cooking.
I
up
don't
the
know. It's and we have to get past judgments and these polarizations and polarities, and like, there were people saying, oh no, it was just this trans activist, and then something about something written on the bullet, and okay, that's all possible. And they're going to come up with that stuff anyway. I bet there's going to be a manifesto, and the guy's going to have written Free Palestine or something as well. Like, why the fuck not?
Right.
Well, a manifesto would take like 185 bullets. That's a lot of things to write.
Oh yeah, not on the bullets, but I mean, like,
I know.
With the ATF. But also, so the FBI failed to apprehend, and they never apprehended him. And Trump just went on TV and said the ATF had to get him. So something happened there, and there's too many layers here. And what I guess the point that I didn't get to is that there's this, there's a conflict between Netanyahu and Trump. And Trump just the other day said that the Israelis have agreed to my terms, capital T terms, V. My terms, the Israelis. He didn't say Netanyahu. He didn't say, I've just had a great call with Bibi, my good friend, or it's not like Bibi went and they met. Like, in other words, like, you may be aware that just a few weeks ago, a group called the CIS, not to be confused for the Russian CIS, but an Israeli group called the CIS, which is an organization of 600 former Shin Bet and Mossad officers, including every single living director of Mossad and Shin Bet, issued a joint statement calling for Netanyahu to end the war. They warned that he's going in the direction of extremism, of totally isolating Israel and causing irreparable harm, and that the military campaign is unwinnable. And so this was a very clear and direct thing. And they also said that the head of the ground command needs to go onto the Knesset floor and articulate those things clearly. Well, he didn't do that, and Netanyahu ordered him to begin a ground invasion of Gaza City, which people are getting mixed kind of what's going on, but the ground campaign stalled at the outskirts of town, and when it stalled, that commander basically said what the CIS was saying he needed to say. He said, this is as far as we can go without, the cost benefit equation going south. This is as far as that we can go. From this point, we're able to negotiate a release of the hostages. We've captured the suburbs outside of Gaza City. If we proceed, the losses will be too high, and there are actually hostages in the city. And so what you're seeing now is where other, command that Netanyahu can tell what to do on the Israel side, they're just launching rockets like ballistics and stuff at Gaza City, but you don't have this robust ground campaign that would be required for occupation or to root out Hamas or whatever the mythology is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You also commented on Qatar. If we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, who's who in that one. There's a lot of I think there's the term that you use, a lot of low resolution view of a lot of things. And I think Qatar fits in that box. I think your comment was along the lines that they're trying to undermine the deal that Trump is trying to make. And this also points to the factionalized Israel Netanyahu versus maybe like the Shin Bet and, former Mossad guys.
Correct.
So if you can you, for the audience that hasn't read your stuff on that, maybe.
Well, you've got obviously this plan for Gaza happening, and the Saudis and Gulf monarchs, they have agreements with each other. There's tensions, but they have agreements with each other. And when you look at who, if Saudi Arabia, you guys have been following this. What was it, about a year ago that this agreement since the late 70s expired? And really, the petrodollar is like you can say that the lease agreement on the petrodollar is over with, and now we're like month to month, and we're like on a month to month agreement, so to speak, or quarter to quarter, if you will, with the Saudis. So the Saudis are holding extreme coinage on this, and they have their commitments, and they have the gravity of the situation. Maybe Nick, you can help me come back to what I was saying about the when we say Qatar, I think of like 19th century, Pirates of Qatari, but yeah, Qatar, Qatar, whatever. I know Douglas McGregor calls it Qatar as well. It's all good. I don't know, I read more than I speak, so hone me in on what I might have been saying about Qatar.
Sure. So there was the strike. I want to say it was either last week or early this week. And supposedly we are told that it was a strike on Hamas leaders, right? And now we're hearing, people crowing, saying, oh, every single Hamas leader is dead. And so, okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I think your comment was that there is an agreement, and Trump helped to broker it, where they want to develop Gaza. Right. It'll be Palestinians who are mostly in there, kind of running everything. It's going to become this nice beachfront thing. By the way, V, V called this out in Algo Factory a long time ago.
Yeah.
The first person that I heard,
almost a year.
yeah, it was a lot. It was
almost a year at this point.
yeah, it was before a lot of things. So the agreement is made, right? And then I think part of the problem is like Israel gets to like it maybe be a percentage of the deal. They might. I think you're. I mean, I think you were just saying.
Yeah,
it,
I was saying that they're going to be like a 1/5 or 1/4 partner, and but you can't do it. They can't do it alone. But Netanyahu. So this goes back to when Netanyahu came to the United States, and Trump is right there next to him, and they had met, and nominally, or you would have thought they would have known or agreed what they're going to come out and say, but they give a joint press conference. And Trump announces that Gaza is an American protectorate. So, and so many people focused on the fact that, oh my God, this is Palestine. What has he just done? This is a crime on the Palestinians. And they kind of don't really focus on the fact that actually, who practically controls it, is Israel. So actually Trump took it from Israel in like an actual fact, not in actual law. In actual law, it's Palestine, but in actual fact, it's Israel. And now Trump has claimed it from Israel. So where does that leave everyone?
Well, I think that the relating it back to Qatar or what have you. At least I'm not going so far as to say Israel.
Israel and Qatar.
I'll tell you what. If I was if I was somebody who operated in the area, I might say it that way. But I've never been to Israel. But anyway, the point that I think you were kind of, or at least a theory that you had, or it might be that the strike on Qatar, and I say Qatar because I got a buddy of mine, his older brother is in joint intelligence. He always said it that way, and I just kind of picked it up.
I hear it that way all the time. Yeah, it's
Yeah, who knows? I say Qatar with a hard Qatar.
Oh, that sounds right to me.
Yeah, like that's but I'm not from there. It's always fun to play those games. But the point I think being with the strike over there, I think what you're saying was that it might be an attempt to undermine the deal that Trump made.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. Yes, thanks for that. I can go from here. So obviously if you go back to what was it, around September 7th or 6th or thereabouts, Trump announced this thing where he says that the Israelis, not Netanyahu, but the Israelis have accepted my terms, capital T. And then he says Hamas needs to accept my terms too. And then he makes it all like this bluster, like tough talk on Hamas. But everyone knows that Hamas has already agreed to these terms. Like Hamas is totally agreement capable. They've agreed to everything. There's like nothing they haven't agreed to. Like the prisoner exchange, they're not going to be in control of the paramilitary in a Palestinian Authority in Gaza. They'll have nominal parliamentary representation in a political system. They've agreed that the policing and law enforcement in Gaza will be conducted by a joint coalition of like Egyptians and Qataris and Saudis and a coalition of the Arab willing, so to speak. Who are Arab speakers, who are Muslims, who respect the traditions, who grew up with beliefs about Palestine should be free. Like this is common currency in the region, right? So, this is a friendly force as far as it's very important. Like Nick, we're from the US and we know how important it is, like policing, like community policing, like how hard it is if you're in South Central to have these cops from Simi Valley, whose parents are from Nebraska. It's like doesn't work. Like you need guys from South Central to police South Central,
Right.
And so this is so much like the Palestinian thing. And so this is the solution that everyone has already agreed to. The Arab League already came out. There's a document that hasn't seen the light of day yet, but it's a 108-page PDF that has like, here are all the investors. You have the Americans, you have Israelis, you have Europeans, and then the predominant is like, you even have the Bin Laden group in there, but it's the Saudis. It's all of the Gulf monarchs are actually listed there, and they're different construction, textbook companies for the schools. The aim is to build for every family of 3 or 4 to build homes that are about 1,800 square feet or 1,900 square feet. That's about 180 square meters. this is like all in the prospectus in a version that the Washington Post and New York Times leaked, which I think is either legit or an amalgam that's a fake that is comprised of all real parts that I've read about and seen references to in detail going back to last March, the Arab League summit where the Egyptian agreement was made, and Trump already articulated his approval of a variation of this plan. So like the only obstacle right now is not even the Israelis, man. It's just Netanyahu. It's just Netanyahu. You know, like we're ready to solve the Israel-Palestine thing, and there's just one man and his extremism in the way right now. And you know, and that's what's coming up. So then you can understand the Charlie Kirk thing, right? Is he pro-Israel? Well, yeah, that's boilerplate American Republican stuff. You know, he goes back to the pre-MAGA, you know, Turning Point USA. What was he, like 18 years old in 2012? You know, and that's when it came out, and it's like he was kind of like a new type of young Republican for old people. They're like, oh, what a nice young man, you know, oh, it makes me proud to be a Republican. It's good to see that young folks are, you know, we still have some smart ones out there, you know. And that was but as the MAGA thing took off and everything, he was absorbed into these MAGA structures, and all of his talking points line up with Trump. And you know, which Israelis are they aligned with? You know, it's not the liberals, right? But it's not Netanyahu. You see, so
yeah, it's I got Hobo Sermons in the audience here saying that the news is saying that they have the Kirk shooter. We'll see if I can find that out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's just Trump just said that he met with that the father is like a preacher and convinced his son to turn himself in to the ATF. That's what I was saying.
Oh, that's what, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like it wasn't the FBI, so something happened there. And that's what we were saying. You know, if you look at, you know, so I do every day or every other day a live stream at some point in the day, and I'll have some show notes or like what the show's going to be about. And yesterday we're saying like something's up with, you know, Kash Patel. Like we don't know, question marks there. Like, did he vacillate? Did he fuck up? Like what, you know?
I call him Blink Twice Patel. Because the look on his face, it's like, then this came from one of our guys, Velas. He goes, I always want to ask him, blink twice if someone has a gun to your head. Because the way he looks, like he just looks like he's scared shitless.
There was a very bad optics press conference from some weeks ago when he's standing there and trying to, like, he's like supposed to report out. It was as if like he was in high school and everyone was supposed to report like on the status of their final project, and it's like 6 weeks before the end of the school year, and he's just like saying a bunch of vague stuff, and it's almost like he's reporting on the status of other people in his class's projects, but he's not actually saying what he's done, you know. And you see
he just
Trump,
kind of phoned it in last minute, like so
you know, and you see Trump there kind of side-eyeing and like, you know, doing that and kind of losing his patience with the bullshit, because, you know, he's a manager, he's an owner, he knows when report backs are full of shit. And man, that guy Kash was sweating bullets. So yeah, who knows what the relation is? There's questions about his romantic interest and, you know, the facticity of her Israeliness, but that doesn't tell you that she's a Likudnik or works for Netanyahu. Because, you know, people kind of, that's low resolution. Like, yeah, it's great that we know this thing that you might think you know something, like, okay, she's Israeli, but you don't know what type of Israeli. I mean, look, the point is that if they're just all Israelis and it's some moral thing because the occupation, that's a different category from what we're talking about.
No, I think it's the general feeling out there, and of course you have to be careful with all that. But she has some interesting gaps in her employment history, apparently. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's where she probably was going out doing her training.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, a lot of women have interesting gaps in their employment or gaps in general. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just the.
You know, it's not like they have to work. You know what I mean, per se. Yeah. I mean, you know, if they look all right and have a boyfriend for a while, it's like gaps in their employment history. You know?
Yeah, but she's pretty hot. No, so there's that's Kash. When it comes to, I guess we do have some time, unless you want to if there's more on kind of the Israeli Charlie Kirk, Cutter, any of those things.
I think I would just say in a minute. And we can pivot maybe to Venezuela.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, yeah, just in a minute, I would say Trump and Netanyahu, in my opinion and my assessment. I mean, my background is in security studies, geopolitics, so it's this is my assessment, you know, like my professional one. Trump and Netanyahu have a big problem with each other, and there's Netanyahu is basically in the way, and Trump effectively declared a political coup against Netanyahu about 5 or 6 days ago. And through that message, where he's, you know, where the Israelis have accepted his terms, but not necessarily Netanyahu. And he didn't exclude Netanyahu by name, but he didn't include him and certainly didn't meet with him before making this statement. So you know that this relates to the CIS 600. This doesn't relate to Netanyahu. Now, Netanyahu can get on board. You know, he can get on the bus, but the bus will arrive at its destination with or without Netanyahu. So far, Netanyahu has launched out. Then he attacks the delegation in Qatar. That's where we had, you know, mentioned. That's where you mentioned that. That is meant to derail. You know, Lavrov made a statement like, "How could this not be intended to derail or expected to not to derail the, you know, the peace and the exchange of prisoners?" But nevertheless, Hamas has refrained from issuing some kind of, you know, radical statement, you know, retracting anything because they know the game. They have assurances from the American side to, you know, to hold tight and to hold firm and to, you know, maintain the agreement and let Netanyahu appear as the warmonger and the, you know, the criminal. And he's losing political capital. There's a large swooshing sound inside of Israel, which is his political future as we speak. And you know, the fact that he was immediately had to answer for in the United States. Did you kill Charlie Kirk? The fact that he had to answer for that, I'm sure he was already pissed about it because he understands that at the point, in other words, the fact that the news is even entertaining that question shows where the Overton window is. And this alone should tell us, you know, how we're going in the right direction, in fact. So
Yeah, I mean it's and you've been covering this for some time, the rift between Netanyahu and Trump, and it's been again, I think one of the primary examples was in that conference when Trump went ahead and just kind of broadside or blindsided him, and Netanyahu was just kind of like looked over at him and looked a little uncomfortable. It's like, oh, you're just shitting my Cheerios, man. But the other one is, I think it was like a month ago. I don't know what the event was geopolitically. There was something going on. It might have been a negotiation in Washington with the Europeans, but Netanyahu showed up and he was there for like 3 or 4 days and Trump just like wouldn't see him.
yeah, he basically tied himself to a chair in you know, outside in the lobby of the Oval Office. That he was, it was after they had met, and there was nothing, like people were saying, because look, there was 2 past meetings, right? Body language optics were very bad. Basically, Trump said things that were political coups, like small, low-key coups. Although the big one was like, you've lost Gaza. Like Gaza's now ours, like not yours. So that was huge. And so we didn't have that type of overtly negative thing. So people are like, oh, it looks like it was a good meeting this time. So what are you saying to that, XF? And I'm like, well, hold, you know, slow your fucking roll, motherfucker. Like, because there's like, he didn't get anything, you know, like just if he would have gotten something, you would have heard him say something. And I was saying that on day 1. And then it was like day 2, people were like, do you know, Xoaquin, that he's still there? And I'm like, no, he's still there. It's like, so he's definitely not gotten anything yet, you know? And then it was like, you know, I wasn't doing like Netanyahu watch or something. Like there's other things going on following Ukraine, things like this. And then people are like, hey, it's, you know, Xoaquin, it's day 3 and Netanyahu is still there. I'm like, so what, he's fucking like handcuffed himself to the chair outside the Oval Office. So I'm like, so he's definitely not gotten what he came for.
Yeah, no, he's glued his hand to the wall like it was a climate protest.
Yeah, they like nailed that shit in. Yeah, so he crucified himself there. And then, anyway, so, well, he is the Messiah, so who knows? But
something.
So,
yeah. The other one.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, like it's the other one. That's right. Ooh, yeah,
I know,
profound, dude.
I know. I never even thought of that. That's that'll stir your bowels.
Right. well, let's keep ourselves from getting deplatformed too quickly. But yeah, so they have so he's there, and then there was a fourth day, and I'm like, all right, get the fuck out of here. This guy got jack shit, you know, and he was trying to say, oh, there was an emergency at the airport in Tel Aviv, so I've decided to stay, and you know, I was like, okay, whatever, like, yeah, like you guys don't have that shit on lock, you know, so.
Yeah, I think
And
he
he
just
went
had
back.
power for so long. He's one of those guys that he's that manager that you just can't fire. And I imagine he's got like crap on a lot of people. And so to dislodge him without causing a lot of damage, it seems like it's I don't want to say impossible. I mean, but that seems to be like what needs doing.
Yes, yes. It's he works both channels just because, you know, people might think, oh, you know, the Likudniks and Netanyahu, the right wing, but they have long-standing, deep relationships with both parties in the United States. And you know, he's got Epstein stuff, and Trump's playing this Epstein thing, and you know, there's lots of cards that people are holding, and there's a lot of strategy, and you know, known unknowns and stuff. There's a lot of game theory going on, and rational choice, and people are playing their squares and their options. So yeah, it's a shame that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and it's, you know, I guess so. You know, just before we get to Venezuela, but aside from the Trump Netanyahu rivalry, and kind of placing Kirk clearly in on Team Trump, and that angle of, you know, we're working with the CIS 600 really, you know, against Netanyahu, right? So this is how to make Israel great again in their view, and how to, you know, solve the Palestinian crisis that Israel has been creating for itself, really, for, you know, and the British and others and the Americans have, you know, there's blood on all of our hands, brother. You know what I mean? But it's been going on for so long, and people are done with it, and people can't watch, you know, 2.5 million Palestinians be genocided in real time. Like this is a juncture, like this is a pivotal moment in history that says, like, are you a human being, you know? So
Well, and
yeah.
the clock's ticking too. You know, Trump said it. He said it. Basically, told AIPAC like, you know, it's done now. Like, it's not what it used to be for you. And the left is already done. The left is done with them. Like, because the you know, you can see that with the left, but the right is tricky. I think the effect of the Schofield Bible will erode with time. I think you know, you got to, and I hate to say it, I think there's just going to be, that's going to take a long time. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Those
definitely.
entrenched boomers that just they can't think past, you know, they all they care about is like their football game on Sunday with their beer and mowing their lawn before it gets too hot or too cold. You know, it's like that's their, and so, oh, we support Israel because my church told me to, like, you know, the mega church guys, and you know, that I think is going to take time, but I think that those might be the holdouts that you just have to work around, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be, because there was an earlier point in time when, as an upstart, those congregations that so badly interpreted scripture, you know, it's
bad exegesis, yeah,
you know, bad exegesis, and it's, you know, not understanding, you know, what is the Old Testament, like, why did Jesus even come in the first place, like, not even understanding that, like, you know, not how could you read like in John or Matthew, for example, you know, the witness account, you know, the parable, so to speak, but the reality of the gospel story of the Canaanite woman. In some Bibles, it's called the Syrophoenician woman, but this is the story of the Canaanite woman. And I was lampooning it on the channel earlier, and when I was saying never forget Iran was behind 9/11, and I was saying never forget what the lesson of that was. You know, Jesus said that, you know, Israel's a piece of land and a genetic bloodline. Israel's not everyone who, you know, recognizes that Jesus is Christ. The story of the Canaanite woman is that the point is that she's not Israeli, she's not Judean, she's not Jewish. And she's like, and she goes to him, and her daughter's been possessed, and she's asking Jesus for relief, for a miracle, for salvation. and he's basically asking her, why and so forth, and why should we do this, because you're not of Israel. And she goes, yes, but I know that you're the Lord, I know that you're the Messiah. And he's like, correct answer. And he exorcises the demons and saves them.
And too bad V's not here. He's actually he has a really good understanding of the Bible, and I think his exegesis, if you will, might be, I don't know, I have no idea, but it might be closer to yours than maybe most people. He tends to read things not in the I went to church and everybody else told me this is how it's supposed to be context, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like the reading of the Syro-Phoenician woman that I'm giving is the most standard, Trinitarian,
and standard's not wrong, right? Like standard's okay.
It's the Catholic, Orthodox, most Protestants that are not like Schofield Bible. I think what I'm saying is the Anglican version, it's the Lutheran version, it's the Presbyterian version, it's the, I think there's maybe just some evangelical, lowercase b evangelical, and maybe some Baptist offshoots that are Schofield, that are just forgetting that story, like not addressing it or interpreting it upside down, or they focus on other things instead, or they conflate Old and New Testament and like what the whole, what the whole point of Jesus is like in that. But maybe folks are not religious and we're like off track for them, but people should know that the takeaway is that the so-called Christian Zionists, according to 100% of Christianity in the rest of the world, regardless of denomination, and probably 90% of Christianity in the United States, knows that that's like a bullshit take, So that's the takeaway.
No, that's fair. So yeah, that's let's move to Venezuela. This is one, I think that the nuance here is missed by like 99% of everybody. So this would be like, I'd love to hear sort of, and again, now I'm trying to backtrack in my mind, like where you went with Venezuela, but I think so we're talking about like what, Colombia deals with Chevron, what Maduro is really doing versus what we're told he's doing, who doesn't like who, but they actually do like who, like those, is there a way to like kind of sandwich that for us?
Yeah. So just to first, maybe while I'm explaining this part, you could like take advantage of your access to a computer.
Yeah, sure.
And just pull up like separate queries like Chevron and Russia and 2025, right? ExxonMobil and Venezuela, and like this. So it's going to be like Russia, Venezuela, Trump, and who's done what, and I could
say what's the relationship between, and then what's your
sure, yeah, that will help, like
Chevron, Russia, Venezuela, and Trump.
Sure, yeah.
Like, is that a good
ExxonMobil and ExxonMobil and put deals 2025 and Guyana.
Okay, deals in 2025
and Trump. Guyana.
Guyana.
Yeah, Guyana.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Query is up. I'll zoom in so people can actually see it.
Yeah.
Connection between Chevron and Russia.
As it's doing its crunching there, what I can tell you is that okay, so the current date, whatever, is if you understand what happened with U.S. and Iran and their kayfabe conflict that came at the end of the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. You have to understand how Trump de-escalated and actually agreed with Iran about what the U.S. would hit, what they would hit it with, and how Iran would respond. And this was all agreed to while Trump was able to get the Israelis to stop the attack and he was able to get them to stop the attack by using his influence in Israel with the right-wing opposition against right-wing Netanyahu on his court and his court dates. So it's actually like his failure to appear was going to be the issue. I know it's so pedestrian,
Right.
but it that's what it boiled down to. And so if you understand that Trump didn't actually hit Iran with a bunker buster, right? Like they used tomahawks. Okay, so and then Iran, hit Qatar. After asking the United States, hey, can we hit you there? And then, okay, how much time do you need to move your people out? Okay, we're going to hit you this number of times. Okay. Like that was what they had, a total agreement, and part of that leaked out. And then other parts, when I exposed that only tomahawks were used, they admitted finally that tomahawks were used mostly only, but they still held on to the myth that at that one place, Fordo, that they did use bunker busters. But if you just look at the satellites and the lack of damage, there was no bunker buster used, there. But yeah, check this out. Chevron has long-standing joint ventures with Venezuela's state-owned PDVSA dating back to the 20s. And then you have this, see, Trump initially revoked Chevron's operating license in 2025. But now you'll see they reversed course. Look, by July, that's just happening now. See that? You see that?
Zoom in a little for you.
Sure, so people can understand that this is all theater. Because business is happening. People are happy.
The Russia's tie-in, close ally to Maduro,
Yes.
has invested heavily in the oil sector via Rosneft.
Yes.
Trump's reinstatement was seen detrimental to Russia, reducing its influence as U.S.
Well, that's going to be like the Grok, I don't rely on it when I'm,
It's just reading what the...
Yeah, I just wanted people to like have, because my explanation would be I would start at the end and then work my way to the middle and then maybe get to the beginning. It's just, I'm a better writer than a speaker, so.
So let me roll down. You want just the summary here? That's kind of the end, if you will.
Yeah.
No single multilateral deal ties all entities, but pivotal ones include Chevron's reinstated Venezuela license in July, the Hess acquisition in July, giving Guyana access. These intersect with Exxon's Guyana operations and Trump's sanction flips.
Right. So just to break that down so people understand. So in 2024, so when during the Biden administration, and going back some time, there had been a lot of ExxonMobil's assets were nationalized by PDVSA, the state-owned Venezuelan oil company. So then ExxonMobil relocated and moved their operations to Guyana. In 2024, Venezuela announces the annexation of Guyana. Like they annex it. Now they haven't moved the military in, but they've been holding referendums. They've been like getting support in the population. They could invade. Guyana has no military to speak of. And okay, so all this tension is there. Why is no one talking about, like, if you want to make Maduro into a madman, you want to make him Saddam Hussein, like Saddam Hussein went into Kuwait, just like Maduro could right now go into Guyana to go after Exxon, right? But instead, everyone made a deal. So in reality, Trump just totally ignores that this bellicosity, so to speak, from Venezuela. They make it about this ridiculous drugs thing. Everyone knows that the drugs come from Colombia. The Colombians are anti-Trump and they're pro-Ukraine. So, but they're making it sound like they care about Venezuela because they just want to make Trump look bad. But in reality, the Marxist guerrillas are Colombian, not Venezuelan.
Is that FARC?
That's FARC. And
Yeah.
they're like the major cocaine dealers, drug dealers. And up until not long ago, Maduro had good relations with them. But in cementing this better relationship with Trump, Maduro turned against FARC. So it's actually Trump and Maduro that are in an alliance against the drug cartel FARC, right? So the whole trend that the whole trend de agua,
Trend there, Ahua.
yeah,
Agua.
agua, yeah, agua. But it was funny we won't mention his name, but anyway, the Arahua Tren de Arahua gang is Aragua, is just this kind of fictional thing that they baked up to create like this narrative, you know. So there's in fact nothing going on at all. And look at the way that Trump was able to navigate the whole thing with Israel and Iran, and have, you know, strikes on Iran that were agreed with Iran before they happened. The same story, you know, the Russians are building 8 nuclear reactors in Iran, right? And we may have been talking with V about this before. Like these are ones that the U.S. can invest in through the parent company that has a subsidiary in Iran, the parent company in Russia. So, in other words, the U.S. is going to have investment in Iranian nuclear, not under the Shah, not, you know, after Iran destroys them, not after regime change, but like this Iran, like Islamic Republic Iran, you know? So once people get their head around that, and that's dealing with fucking Israel, like that's triangulating around Israel, dude. There's no Israel to triangulate with in striking a deal with Maduro. Like Trump and Maduro are just free and open to have like any agreement. There's no pressure on them. They can make up any script. They're the only 2 guys in the ring, you know, doing the, okay, now you flip me over thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know what people don't see about this, but once you get into the history of Chevron, ExxonMobil, PDVSA, and Russian Rosneft, then you're going to see that in Russia, you have joint projects kicking back up ever since the thawing of relations. You know, you had obviously the big meeting in Alaska, but before that, you had, you know, you had Witkoff and others in Russia, you know, meeting with the Russians, and they were agreeing. Like people thought they were talking about Ukraine, which, yeah, somewhat. I mean, there's not that much to talk about. Russia wins, Ukraine loses, but maybe there's some like some rare earth elements, and you know, they can buy options or be part of a consortium in Russia that develops Ukrainian assets, or in parts that are actually, most of those are in the parts that Russia already has. Like most of the valuable stuff like that in Ukraine, I think like 70% of it or 80% of it is in that 24% of Ukraine that Russia already has.
Aleutian Strait Tunnel. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that was so funny about the British deal. See, the British deal that was secret with Ukraine about rare earth elements or rare earth minerals, people were mind blown when they understood that that was a problem and a secret. But the secret behind that secret is that's why the British needed to pursue the fucking war, because those are in the parts that Russia holds. Well, why not just recognize that Russia holds them and be smart like Trump and make the fucking deal with the Russians? Like, fuck Ukraine and fuck the British, you know?
They have a hard on for Russia going back hundreds of years. That's
hundreds
the problem.
of years that they're like the origin of like Russia derangement syndrome. So
Russia derangement syndrome. That's good.
So,
yeah, no, it's what do you think the odds are? You know, Alaska, like I was looking just thinking of the implications of an Aleutian Strait tunnel. So connecting the BRI to the US through Aleutian Strait. And it wouldn't surprise me that, as long as Europe is Europe, and as long as City of London is City of London, who is probably behind a ton of stuff with Netanyahu and who knows who. But I'm wondering how stable such a project would be. Like, would they have the audacity to, try to pun semi-intended derail such a tunnel operation if that conversation even were going on in Alaska?
It's going on. It's going on. There's such a conversation is going on. I mean, people like Lyndon LaRouche were writing and talking about this decades ago, but it's required to remove the British from Canada, at least from British Columbia. You need to have a security zone. I think you can establish that no matter what flag lays there. But in terms of, actually, denazification of Canada, it like has to happen. Like, you're not going to see. So where are all the Ukrainian Nazis really coming from that aren't from Ukraine? They're in Canada. Christopher Freeland, everyone knows the whole thing. You had the, what's his face, Juncker fiasco in the parliament where he was like the, SS guy. I mean, so that's a huge community there. And you're going to have all of these Ukrainians without a state, but they're going to be funded through Metaverse Ukraine. And you're going to have this whole future dystopic, like 2035 is going to be like Ukrainian terrorists doing all this stuff, problem, reaction, solution, blah, 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 children of men, blah, blah, blah. But then in Canada, it's like going to be a problem. So at least you need to have a contiguous United States from the Pacific Northwest up to Alaska. Because you're going to have
corridor, maybe down the coast.
You're talking about like Los Angeles and San Francisco, Portland and Seattle, up to Juneau and over to Russia, And
I mean, the Chinese have so much control in Vancouver, right? So, and the Chinese are, friends with Russia. So maybe we might at least get some cooperation on the border right there.
This is the direction, and this is. Absolutely, but this is the direction when you think about the speed of boats and the cost and how boats work. Like you basically there's no really good cost equation unless the whole boat is loaded up. But with trains, like if on that particular train ride you can be a few cars short, you just don't have to have those cars. You see. Boats is this whole commitment and the whole time of the arrival. Trains, you can send another one. Yeah. Trains is like an ongoing flow. Trains is like circuitry, and boats is like this ant trail of one-offs.
Yeah, trains is the next best thing to a pipeline when it comes to oil.
Exactly. Trains is like pipeline in little cars. So
I think the conversation a few months ago that we had was like trains are 19th century tech and boats are like 16th century tech.
That's it. We're catching up to the 19th century. Yeah,
rushing headlong into the 19th century.
The whole geopolitics of the planet, and the entire rise of the Spanish. And then the British, almost immediately, and their wars, and then the rise of the United States, as these are all sea powers. Mm-hmm. Like we have a gross disproportionate development of port cities, and port cities allow you to send a navy to blockade, and you can isolate every country that has a port, and when you're all connected by rail, on a line, then it changes the equation. It moves away from kind of a zero sum game to a not zero sum game. It changes it. Like, in other words, it creates all the downstream problems to try to cut someone out from the middle, because then how does the train get to the other side if someone is cut out from the middle? You have, so you get cooperation. Yeah. So the model of ports, it kind of lends toward this kind of
series versus parallel. Like, yeah, series versus parallel. So the train has to go through town A, B, C to get to D. A boat can go to any of those independently, although it's less profitable. But so, I mean, in a certain way, boats actually probably will continue to be used for those kinds of reasons, right?
No reason not to still have boats.
Yeah.
But volume of trade, like you might not even see, although we already have post-pandemic, but moving forward, you might not even see like a total or net decrease in naval maritime trade, but moving forward, like increases, augmentations of net trade will be seen through road and rail. So like that's what Israel's facing vis-a-vis Iran, which Iran has a direct line to China, and it's by rail, and Israel is dependent on things going around India and going or from India and going, coming all the way around the Saudi peninsula and up,
Horn of Africa, and if it's cut off,
So it's
I think the interesting concept though is the requirement, if you are going to connect the world via commerce through rail, that whole cooperation angle, that would actually, I think, be a good way to unify a lot of countries that might not otherwise be unified.
That's right. And
not unified, but made friends.
Not unified, but it creates collaboration and cooperation. Like you have in the zero-sum game modeling, which is really the origins of game theory. If you're talking about like the von Neumann Morgenstern, zero-sum game, and it's not until you get into the 50s and 60s with like Nash and then Schelling applications of game theory is really geoeconomics. The application of game theory is all geoeconomics, international political economy, and international relations. The economics, and it's not just economics, it's strategic thinking. You're talking about tit for tat, and it's about there's going to be more than one interaction. And one of the mistakes, or in the old way of thinking, in all or nothing, winner take all, and zero-sum game, in the von Neumann Morgenstern original game theory from the 40s, is it assumes one interaction, and as a result of that, it's going to produce a winner or a loser, right? But where in reality, unless you're talking about mutually assured destruction, where in reality you just have one interaction with a geographic reality like a neighbor or another country in the world, like you're going to have ongoing situations, opportunities, dealings. So why would you limit the complexity of a model to a single interaction that's only going to produce like a 0 or an X, like tic-tac-toe, like in the movie War Games with Matthew Broderick? Like, would you like to play a game? Like, like why would it be one interaction unless it's nuclear? Even nuclear is a series of exchanges where you might limit or whatever. But so anyway, Nash and Schelling application to Nash in international relations is in geopolitics is like there's going to be multiple interactions. There's not going to be one interaction, and you can build trust, and you can build trust even if you've had misgivings, or even if you've had betrayals or moments of bad faith. And so long as you can over time get your counterparty to see through your actions and through diplomacy, but your words matching your actions, that like if you slap me, I'm going to slap you back. But if you give me a break, I'm going to give you a break. Or if you do me a favor, I'm going to do you a favor. In other words, there's no grudges and not taking it personally, right? It's not about like what feels good or what feels right. And so many people observe geopolitics like, if I was Putin, I would have nuked them already. If I was Putin, I would have destroyed all of Ukraine's infrastructure. It's like, no, there are elites and people in Ukraine. There's oligarchs that are going to be on the right side of things at the end of this story, whether you fucking like it or not. So,
well, that and I know everybody, Putin's crazy. Oh, okay. If you leave all that kind of stupidity out of it, it's I'm pretty sure he's not interested in like decimating civilians. It's
right. I mean,
otherwise he
too. I mean,
he would have taken out their power grid if that's what he wanted to do.
Exactly. He could take it down. They could. I mean, Russia has the ability through conventional means, not just nuclear,
Yep.
to, you know, like all Ukrainian cities could look like Gaza right now. You know, like the fact that it doesn't should speak very loudly. It's like the dog that didn't bark. You know, like what you don't see, like, should speak very loudly to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, the silence, right? The space
Definitely
where
silence.
something is missing.
Yeah.
And they were pretty open about it. And this goes to what you were saying with like your actions matching your words. Um, strategic ambiguity is it's a strategy, but the problem is that it's bankrupt because in the end, you're going to be seen rightfully as non-agreement capable.
That's
So,
it.
and that's where we are now. Like no one trusts us. No one wants to do deals with us. I think we're starting to,
Nick, you're
get.
tapping on this is very important because you can understand where in the history of these white papers and theories of strategic culture, I write and work for Strategic Culture Foundation strategic culture relates specifically to actually a nuclear powers culture and their culture of strategy, which relates specifically to, Schelling and Nash and, versus von Neumann Morgenstern and things like this. So this talks about realism and idealism. It talks about posture, talks about being agreement capable, non-agreement capable, right? So like where are the conditions that like you could see that it could make sense, albeit temporarily, to be non-agreement capable, is if no one's response could possibly bother you. Like if you were like a almost a sole or lone global hegemonic superpower, then it's like those are the people that can break agreements. It's kind of like, think about, you're the most beautiful girl in the room. Like you don't need to like call people back. Like you don't need to return phone calls that you don't want to.
It's he who has the gold makes the rules.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But now that's not the case anymore. But you have a reputation for being a gold miser. You see what I mean? For being a shekel grubber. So what's going to happen next? Now you need a regime change of policy. So obviously it's still the American flag. Obviously we still have a Congress and a court. But we've had an actual new team come in, and now we have to meet with the Russians. Now we have to like show that we're agreement capable, and we have to come with the olive branch. We have to come, with carrots and stop this game of sticks. Unless they give us a stick, then we politely stick back. But it's never personal. It's never personal. It's only just
negocios son negocios.
It's the exactly. It's just the language of love in a way. But yes.
Mutual self-interest, right? Like I think that's the deal. And I never thought about what you said with if you're connecting everybody by rail because it's a series situation, it's got to make it through every single city. So you're going to have, and really commerce runs the game, right? Like your commerce, your business is what runs the game. This short period of time where we're able to play the financialist game, we're able to kind of, shake money around and pull some out and play. That's ending quickly because really the rest of the world is less and less interested in US debt. And the fact that we're doing stealth yield curve control is a symptom of that problem. And as that continues, as the US's ability to make and sell actual goods or commodities, as that becomes apparent around the world and the US has got nothing to offer, then of course we're going to have to, and what Trump's trying to do, I don't know how successful he will be allowed to be, but Trump is trying to reindustrialize us to some degree where we do have something to offer. And then it will be commerce that rules the day. And if we can connect through, Russia, through Russia, through the Aleutian Strait, that rail would be an effective way because first of all, commerce is going to be far more profitable via rail.
Right.
And then of course you have the cooperation aspect like we're talking about. It's interesting. I never thought of that.
Fascinating. Yeah. Because like from a bird's eye view, right? The view from 30,000 feet, Nick, you could be like, wow, this process of outsourcing. And basically we had, Brazil, Turkey, Mexico, China, Taiwan, Japan, making a lot of things that are, consumed in Europe and the United States. And on the American side of things, think about all these things made in Taiwan, made in Japan, made in China, and Vietnam more increasingly, and Mexico and things like this. And, so American firms, so to speak, or you can say investors with American passports, let's say with loans coming from, it could be London, it could be anywhere, it could be Germany, United States, and they're investing in building present generation. Back 30 years ago or back 40 years ago, they were building present generation factories, you know, with high returns because of low labor costs, and then you didn't have a tariff regime, right?
Yep.
But there's an advantage that, but you have to be at 30,000 feet to see the advantage. Like, in other words, for the companies at their level of operating, you know, where they're looking from a first-person shooter perspective, right? Like, they are irretractably locked into that dialectic. They're invested in Vietnam, or they're invested in building in China, and they can't untangle from that individually, right? But from a bird's eye view, like if you were just like seeing it structurally as a game, you would be like, you know what? Like, there's actually an advantage that we didn't see. Like, have we gone, you know, up shit creek, right? Well, they don't have a paddle, but we can use legislation, we can reconnoiter and make a solution, which is anything that we invest in now, building, reindustrializing in the United States, is going to be present generation today. And we've kind of skipped over investment into other generations that we did elsewhere, but at higher rates of return. And we haven't bore the cost, so to speak, of building those in. So like our industry is like, a lot of it is like 1960s and 70s, let's face it. But if we build now, it's going to be 20, 30 factories. They're going to be dark factories. They're going to be like 10 employees and like 500 robots, you know, and you don't even have lights on in there because the robots don't need to see,
Don't need
you
light.
know?
Yeah.
You don't have even light. You don't even have a lighting bill. Right? I mean, you have electricity like a motherfucker, but think about all the data centers and think about why they're bringing back nuclear, you know, talking about bringing back nuclear. We've been talking about for a long time. Like they have thorium, there's present generation nuclear that doesn't have these issues of leakage, of waste, things like this. So
small
like,
modular.
Yeah, sky's the limit, man. Like there's a positive iteration, you know, what's fundamentally necessary is the culture of life. Like it can't just be we're living in an infinite universe and we're just this little speck of nothingness. Like that can't be our ontology, that cannot be our cosmology, that cannot be our ideology or our worldview. Our laws and our ethics and our mores and our values cannot be structured around irrelevance, around randomness, around accidental existence. And once we bring it back to, you know, man as a creation of something greater, and that we're at the center of our own universe, so to speak, like a sort of geocentric philosophy, you know, irrespective of the relative space. And even that's misunderstood, Nick. I mean, like, you know, in relativity anyway, perspective, I mean, it is centrality. Like any you can place, you can, so to speak, what's the word, arbitrarily and make your mode of analysis that this is the non-moving object, that the earth is non-moving and everything's moving around
everything
it.
Else moves around it.
Exactly. And we're the center of it. And it's the same equations, the same math works when you plug it in. It's a matter of perspective. We make it about humanity. We make it about two heads are better than one. You know, we make it about increasing the shared experience of life. If this is the philosophy, then we're prepared, like, for the scientific revolution to come. But it has to be based on a higher power and understanding that in the same way that we can create, we were created, you know, and the same way that our creation will have a purpose and nothing is random or accidental, we're not random or accidental. We have a purpose and there was a purpose behind us and so on. So, and this is what's going to put us forward into like the remainder of the 21st century and beyond, dude.
Yeah, see, that's a good way to end it because in our space, you're gonna have your doomers and gloomers, and you know, that's like, to me, it's like, you know, in a certain way, if all you're talking about is doom and gloom, then that's like what you're gonna create. You know, and I do think we have some problems. I think the scientific revolution ultimately will be a good thing for whoever's left. I think that we just have to make sure that we are able to either eradicate or somehow check or encapsulate those who would be a problem. And I think we have a major cultural problem. I think in the US, and this is not like a race thing at all, it comes
Right.
down to culture, right?
Yes,
So,
yes,
you
culture.
know, the people who hate our country, yet they come here, right? Well, okay, if you hate us, you're gone. You know, if you're
Right.
not productive,
Yeah.
you're gone. Like it's just, but I think that's not going to be, I don't think we're going to have to do that through policy. I think that's going to happen through economics by itself in a certain way. I mean, there may have to be some effort there, but I think
Yeah.
that, you know, when the financial games end and the, um, and I know your background, obviously you come from a leftist background and, but you know, I have some of that in mind as well. We've talked about that. I think the capability to pay people off to be unhealthy, to pay people off to
Mm,
not develop their lives, which is what's happening right now. I
mhm,
think that that's masked as like socialism, but what it really is it's a
mm.
poison pill, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
you
We
know,
always
you have,
agree on this in the end, but I'll say this, like, think about with immigration, for example,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like, as you said, the solutions really are economic, and you might need some prodding or pushing in laws, but it's really economic. Well, that's exactly the point, Nick. In By 2008, like natural organic immigration from Mexico was like already hitting net more people leaving the United States back for Mexico. Why?
Yeah.
Because the Mexican economy was growing and the cost benefit equation for people and Mexico's not a country where people make $1 an hour anymore.
No.
People make like $5 and $10 an hour, maybe about half the United States, but the cost of living is half or less. So it's actually in some ways there's a better equation living in Mexico. Like I worry about the wall being built to keep us from like moving to Mexico for opportunities.
That
So
actually is, walls keep people in too.
walls keep people in too, brother. So I mean, there's so much going on there, but it was the Obama Soros project was to like import people in, like basically indoctrinate and create, and they actually had to rely on creating a failed state out of Honduras. Like that was actually a Honduran thing, and people called
Mhm.
it Mexican because
Yeah,
they
people
went
don't
to
know that.
Mexico.
Yeah.
It was
Even I
actually
think even
Honduran.
Mexico was keeping Hondurans from coming up, like
Yeah,
yeah,
AMLO's supposed to be like a leftist guy, but he's working directly tight with Trump on holding this stuff back, and
yep.
on holding the storm back. The worst of it really started under Obama, and they really went full swing, like full into it, like 2014, 2015. They were the ones that were putting the kids in cages and stuff. They were the ones that were separating families and so on. And there's a lot, of course, there's the human trafficking element and all of this.
Well, they called
Um,
Obama the deporter in chief.
yeah, he deported more people than Trump in his first term. So this is like people. So, but the left ignores all these things because for them it's about optics and Orange Man bad. My mom is a Democrat city council person in Las Cruces, New Mexico, very close to the border. You have El Paso right there, right? During the height of this stuff, right? She went on like a fact-finding human rights kind of thing with city council people to the border and she wasn't born yesterday. She's a woman of the left and understands these issues like social justice and wages and rights and things like that, and she's like able to identify like these like kids with like jet black hair and little like fucking Amazon looking bowl cuts with like bones through their nose, like were not the children of these like bleach blonde haired Mexican women with green contact lenses and Prada purses and high heels. Like you're fucking human traffickers. Like she understood that immediately.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah, what
if
do
you
they
know you're
call the
Mexicans, you know you're Mexicans.
what do they call the hot girls that the cartel guys get with? They have like a name for them.
Oh, what are they even called? I don't even know.
Yeah,
But
there's
yeah,
it. I have to look it up. I don't want to
yeah,
like butcher it.
yeah,
But this is an interesting thing because it ties in, right? So to have more of a, like, the problem is going to be fixed through commerce. If you can run, like you could literally go from like the southern cone of South America, all the way to like the Horn of Africa. If you connect with rail, if you
yeah,
connected, and you'd have to put rail across the Panama Canal, which it can't be that hard. A few bridges,
yeah.
nothing, so
Right.
you could do that. And in the end, what I think that will do is that will kind of equalize, not equalize in an equity like leftist way, but it's going to give opportunity to all of these countries, provided that those countries can get their act together. It's going to allow for a freer flow of goods that would at least be one input into the Latin America industrializing. And I think a lot of the reason Latin America hasn't industrialized like they could is because they were stopped from doing it with, things like United Fruit and, what happened to Argentina. Argentina was like set up to be doing really well. And then in the 90s, they just got screwed over by the banking cartel. There's all the capital. Like, people don't know, dude, Argentina was like, they were set up to be a real first world competitive power on the level of any European country. It's so.
Yeah, there's been so many games and setbacks from banking cartels and just old ways of thinking and zero-sum game back to zero-sum game.
Yeah,
and
the ancient.
A lot of it is chauvinism. A lot of it is overplaying your hand, and you kind of get this. Some of this stuff is like The Secret or whatever. It's like manifesting power and mind games and shit. And it's like you're not dealing with peasants. These are like intelligent, strategic, sophisticated people from all around the world. And now these countries have developed economically, and they don't even want their people leaving. Like, they don't want their people leaving to become immigrants and move to Europe or the United States. Like, they spent, how much per capita, like, feeding them, educating them, putting them to technical schools. Think about the investment of a society into the person's first 15 or 20 years before they start becoming productive. So then and then they take off and go to Germany or the United States. Like, forget about it. Fuck no. Like that, well,
that happens.
Hold on a second. You belong here, and why wouldn't you be? You're happy. Your people are here. Your language is here. Your mom, your dad is here. Your brothers, your sisters, your wife, your girlfriends, your best friends, your football club, your memories, the streets, the pubs. Like, why would you fucking leave? This whole, and I want to say, Nick, it's almost like liberal racism. Like, the liberals that want the open borders, like, how chauvinistic, like, how fucking special do you think your shit doesn't stink? Like, you think people are just dying to go to fucking Starbucks and lose all their friends and sit there fucking lonely on their phones? Like, people want to be back where they're from, like, as a rule, generally, Anyway.
Especially from a place like Mexico. We grew up in the same area, and I used to go down to Mexico with my dad all the time. And it's back then, obviously, it was not quite doing as well as it is now. But I think the last time I went there, it was Bahia de Los Angeles, which is it's on the Baja side of the Sea of Cortez, and we did some fishing. And dude, I love it down there. It's like really not. My dad goes surfing down there like all the time.
Oh wow!
He surfs in Nicaragua. He surfs in like quite a few places down there, Costa Rica, like everyone else.
Oh yeah.
So it's those like. You go down there. I haven't been outside.
As we say, all the Mexican countries.
All the Mexican. Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't been outside of Mexico and Latin America, but my dad's been to a number of countries for surfing, and he says every single country he's been to, he loved it. Everyone treated him just wonderfully, and he felt safe everywhere he went. Like, so why would you want to leave that? And I get it. Like,
right.
Like our guys that, we have some guys that do work here that we hire, and obviously he can make more money here and send it home to his family. Like, that's,
sure.
But I think that as the financial game ends, that ends. And then you're going to have teenagers doing those jobs instead of people from somewhere else. Right. I think we just got to go through that cycle. And Trump's doing some prodding with that. Like, there's a lot of people who have just chosen to go back because Trump's made things difficult, and there may be some prodding, and I think that as my friend Ian Burlingame will say, it's the resentfuls who might need to be forced to leave, right? The kind who they hate our society here, and they they're here to make a problem. Like, okay, well,
yeah. I mean, with some of the raids and what's going on with the deportations, it's funny. Like, I was saying, hey, there's a lot of bad optics going on here, and within 2 weeks they fired the PR people in charge of Homeland Security and what's the other one?
ICE,
border, INS, right? Border.
I was thinking ICE.
ICE. It was ICE and Homeland ICE and Border Patrol. ICE and
CB,
Border Patrol. Yes.
BP,
they fired or opened up new positions to handle, exactly what we were talking about on the live stream, just like what 8 or 10, 12 days before. So I really think that in a funny way, if we were saying it, probably other people were thinking it and saying it too, and like collectively, like we were heard. I mean, I think because the optics are much worse than the truth of it. Like there's people in my family that believe that like citizens were getting caught up in that, and I was like, I don't want to argue with it because they're like family, but my wife was like saying that would be weird. I'm like, honey, yeah, they're wrapped up in the local press, like some of the liberal press, like they're just making stories up. Like if there had been a citizen that was like beat up and thrown into a van, like an ICE raid or something, it would be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. The New York Times wouldn't stop talking about it. Everybody would be talking about it every fucking day, and
I've got some buddies in California, and they're buddies from like high school, and then the group expanded out a little bit, and they're actually about half of the guys, or no more, I'd say like maybe 60-70% are Latino, and there are people getting detained by ICE and things like that. It is happening. It just they get let out, and it's a hassle. I guess, unfortunately, you're going to have those instances, but I think if you're beating people up, like you're saying, like if it's a snatch and grab where it's very Gestapo, and I think you might hear more about that. I don't know. I'm assuming you would.
I mean, but people are not deported.
Yeah.
They're not deporting citizens. So it's like this is
kind
of a very big distinction.
But
But the policies and the snatch and grab in which you're talking about, are problems. And like, so who's doing execution of these? And, the pushback, very polarizing. And that's what we were talking about. Like, this is a problem. And it means that they're not explaining, telling communities what to expect, or, what to be prepared, or, carry your driver's license with you, carry your passport, carry your whatever with you, like, don't get, so this, so you have this PR crisis, and that could polarize. And look at what Gavin Newsom and others are saying, or what's going on in Chicago, right? Like, we're not going to allow militarization in Chicago. So these are,
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's and I know this is going to rankle some people. I think, if you have to take a measured approach when you hear something that you really like, because just because you really like it doesn't mean it's the right choice, even though it sounds good. I think that if Trump did go in and militarize, if you will, Chicago, I think first of all, it'll be a smaller operation than the news makes it sound like. And I think there will be a motive of some kind. Rather than just militarizing Chicago, there's probably something happening in the background why he's doing it. For example, in LA, I don't know, it was like 2-3 months ago, Trump went in with, I think it was National Guard, and or maybe it was ICE or whatever it was, and there were some ICE raids, but it turned out that, like, at least according to Tom Luongo, they were going after cartel money. And they actually raided these banks, or at least some kind of financial groups that were helping to launder money for the cartels. And so that the ostensible reason to be there was ICE raids. And of course, you get the Scheinbaum said something like, "Oh yeah, well, we're gonna do something about it." And then you have the rent-a-mobs, and so I'd wonder if we do see U.S. military, National Guard, or what have you in Chicago. I'd wonder if there was a motive behind it that we're not being told about.
Yeah, there's going to be like layers behind this. There's going to be like these types of, there's always, I mean, that's what's happening in Venezuela. That's what happened in Iran. The thing with Venezuela that I think people should understand is that if you see how Trump navigated Iran, and that was with Israel as an obstacle to actually making the deal with Iran that he wanted to make, think about how easy it is for him to deal in Venezuela with Maduro. And going back like a couple of years, Maduro's made a number of statements like, I like Trump, we can be friends, we have, you know, so it's like, but people don't want to hear this, and I understand why, because I think I'm in this unusual place that where I can see this, because I understand what Trump is doing. Like, I understand what works in it. You know, I have sympathies for Venezuela. I have sympathies for Maduro. But people on the left that they like Maduro, that automatically they have Trump derangement syndrome because they're like on the far left. And then people who generally, if you're from Latin America and you like Trump, you're like, you know, I hate Castro, I hate Maduro. You know what I mean? Like, you hate those socialist governments. So you're like, you know, so that you have no perspective. But that's why Trump is playing it this way. Like, how could he say, like, I like Maduro, we're going to, you know, Chevron's going to get this piece, ExxonMobil's going to work here, PDVSA is going to own 40%, like Pemex owns in Mexico, like this, blah, 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 the Orinoco, here's the deal. Like, no, you have to make it look like we're fighting terrorism. And like, there's like, you know, what there is shit, but that's FARC. And those guys are mercenaries going to Ukraine. Like, just understand that Colombian cartels, Colombian mercenaries, right, in the drug broadly universe of piracy and pirates and mercenaries, it's the same people. They're cut from the same cloth. It's people that have military experience. They were in the military until they were 25 or 30, whatever. They get out. Those are their skill sets. What are you going to go do? Like, be a plumber? Or are you going to fucking make $100,000 a year, you know, as a smuggler, human, drug, whatever, bodyguard, mercenary, go to Ukraine? So anyway, my voice is done, man. I gotta wrap up with you.
No, it's dude, great show. Thank you for coming on, everybody. I'm telling you right now, and this is like, I think I come to a good. It depends on your time of day. Like, if you're doing something when I'm, you know, in the middle of the night, I can't make it. But if your like Telegram, you know, chat is going, which is basically where you do your shows. If that's going on and I'm able to, I make those. They're so good. There are very few people who work as hard at this. And I know it may not feel like work to you. But the amount of time you put in,
fatigue at the end, and I experienced the hours being gone. But like, when I'm in a flow, literally, man, it's like there's like an antenna that I'm just, something's coming in and I'm just broadcasting it. That's just how it feels. But then it does, like, from the glucose perspective, after 3 hours, I'm like, oh, I need to eat, you know, more coffee. Keeps me going. But I appreciate it, man. It is work, you know, and it maybe it comes out easily because I've been studying in my field. I mean, I have 15 years practicum in color revolutions, you know, so you know, these things come up, and I guess by the time I'm talking about it, it's easy. Like, I could give a lecture at university and just off the top. But yeah, I guess it's years of work. Yeah.
It's like me talking about trading. It's what I do all day long and have done for years. Yeah.
That's what it is.
One thing I'll say before we end it real quick, though, is that, and it's just something you said 5 minutes ago, there, you know how you say, like, you'll say something and then you'll hear it, somebody rips you off and puts it and monetizes it on YouTube. Like,
yes.
That happens. Like, that's on our show too. Like, we talk about things. Velas, myself, and others will predict things, and Velas really has a penchant for it. And we'll say, hey, this and that and the other is coming, and, you know, understand that this is going to happen, and it's probably going to happen this way. There's a connection between these people, whatever. And then, like, 6 months later, 3 months later, you know, you hear it on either Fox or one of the bigger, you know, whoever influencer. So look, and I think that's done on purpose. I think that they want what they can use, but they don't want us to talk sense into people. So they're gonna take the big news, put that out there, spin it how they want. But my whole point of saying all of that is, if you go in the description and you click on the link there to XF's, you know, Telegram, you're going to get stuff in there that is way ahead of everything else, that has deeper thought on his specialty subjects than anybody I know. You know, my time is really valuable. Like, I don't just spend it on your channel because I'm fucking bored. You know what I mean?
I understand that. Yeah. I come with a lot of receipts. Like, you know, there's forecasts I'm making. Probably I'm batting 800, 900 most of the time. And I'm days, weeks, months ahead of things more. But it's also, I explain what happened before, and then that allows me to forecast. So there's, you know, explanatory power plus predictive power. That's scientific evidence in the social sciences or the soft sciences, so to speak.
And not that you need any more smoke blown up your ass today, but the other end of it is that there aren't a lot of people who are willing to be self-reflective and say, you know, I might be wrong about that. This is so, you know, you're go ahead and click on that link. You'll see everything I'm talking about. And again, Xoaquin, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, bro. We'll see you soon.
Yes. All right. Peace.
Later.
Thank you.